بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing in our reading of the book Umdatul Fiqh of Imam Ibn Qudaamah rahimahullah, this week we move into the chapter Babu Man yajuzu daf'u zakati ilayhi, the one who it is permissible for zakat to be given to him. So here the author is going to talk about those who collect the zakat. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He made zakat something which should be given by those people who have the wealth, which falls into the categories of zakat. We already covered them. And there's those who collect the zakat, those who are eligible, and the Shaykh is going to tell us who they are. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions them in the Quran in Surah At-Tawbah, ayah number 60. قال الله تعالى إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل. Allah says, verily the sadaqat, this means the zakat. It is for those who are faqir, the poor, والمساكين, and needy, والعاملين, and those who are working for collecting the zakat, وعاملين عليها. And then Allah says, والمؤلفة قلوبهم, and those whose hearts are soft or will be softened by giving them the zakat, وفي الرقاب, and those who are enslaved or are indebted by slavery, والغارمين, and those who are those indebted in terms of money, وفي سبيل الله, and the path of Allah, وابن السبيل, and the traveler who lost his or her amount of travel, the amount they needed to travel, or the funding for the travel. They call them the airfare. These 8 Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He mentions in the Quran. So the scholars, when they mention Ahlul Zakat, the people who are deserving of collecting zakat, it is these 8 mentioned in the Quran. The Shaykh says, issue 815, وَهُمْ ثَمَانِيَةُ أَصْنَافٍ, there are 8 categories. And the Shaykh said 8, and the scholars, as we'll see, they differed about any others beyond the 8. Is it 8 or is it more than 8? Means Allah, He mentioned 8, but can we add additional people or groups into there? For example, can we add things like masajid, or giving zakat to Islamic schools, or giving the zakat to the du'at, callers to Allah? Or is it 8, fixed at 8? And what seems to be most correct, as we'll see, is hasar, is restricted to 8. إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala restricted zakat to the 8. You cannot add anyone else beyond that, as we'll see. And some of the ulama, we know there's this difference of opinion, but the stronger view amongst the ulama, past and present, is that it's limited to the 8. So expanding this categories is not correct. The Shaykh begins with the first group, number 816, issue 816, Al-Fuqara'u. Al-Fuqara, you can translate as the poor. But who's the poor one? He says, وَهُمْ الَّذِينَ لَا يَجِدُونَ مَا يَقَعُ مَوْقِعًا مِنْ كَفَايَاتِهِمْ بِكَسْبٍ وَلَا غَيْرِهِ. The fuqara, or the poor, those who don't have, مَا يَقَعَ مَوْقِعًا, that which would be enough for them to suffice for them their needs, بِكَسْبٍ وَلَا غَيْرِهِ, despite having earnings or earning, or by any other means. Means there are those, the scholars, they say, who have nothing. A faqir is one who has nothing, or he has something, but he doesn't have enough for one half. He doesn't have enough for the half of his yearly needs. Who's the faqir? He's the one who has nothing, or he has something, but it's not enough for half of his yearly needs. Okay, I'm going to give the example of that. So he might have something, but it's not in half of what he needs for the year. He doesn't have that much even. So this is the difference between the faqir and we'll see the miskeen. The faqir and miskeen, this is the difference. The faqir has either nothing, or he has something but not enough for half the yearly expenses. Whereas the miskeen has half or more of the yearly expenses but not all. That's the farq between faqir and miskeen. The ulama of the 4 madhabs, they differ on the definitions. So it's important to pay attention. Whose definition is this? The Shafi'iyya wal Hanabila. Shafi'i and the Hanabila, they say the faqir is the one who has nothing or half his yearly expenses. Okay, this is their understanding of it. And when they say expenses, they're talking hajat al-asriya, the base needs. Somebody's food, drink, housing, the likes like that. Not somebody, the kamaliyat. We're not talking about that. We're talking about hajat asaliyah, right? The basics. And so even if he's working, but he doesn't have enough, for half the year's expenses, he counts. As for the miskin, we said he has more than that, so half or more, and he doesn't have all of it. The Hanafis and the Malikis, they have a different definition. The Hanafi and Malikiyya, they said, the miskin, man la yajidu shay'an aslan, فيحتاج المسألة والتحل له. They said that the Malikis and the Hanafis, they said the miskin is the one who doesn't have anything at all, to the point that he has to beg in order to make ends meet, or to provide for himself. And therefore it's permissible for him to beg. So due to the difference between what faqir and miskin it means, you find differences in how do you give the zakat. So the stronger view, Wallahu a'lam, is what the Shafi'i and the Hanabila they say, because we'll see that the person who's a faqir is not like the one who's miskin, and the one who's miskin is not like the one who's faqir. Although sometimes you can interchange them, what seems to be correct is that it depends on the context. In this ayah, Allah separated between faqir and miskin, hence they have levels, and that's the dalil of Shafi'i and Hanabila. The faqir is worse off than the miskin because Allah says, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. Allah يقدم faqir al miskin, which means he's more need. That's one proof they use. And they also use the proof in Surah Kahf. وَأَمَّا السَّفِينَةَ فَكَانَ لِلْمَسَاكِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ فِي الْبَحْرِ. As for them, when story Musa al-Khidr poked a hole in the ship, what did he say? As for this safina, it belonged to the masakin يَعْمَلُونَ فِي الْبَحْرِ. The masakin who owned the boat used to work on the sea. He called them masakin, but they have a boat. Today we call them working poor. Right? This is what we call them. So it doesn't matter if he has a boat and he doesn't have all his needs. Why is he called miskin even if he has money and he's working? Because we said he doesn't have the entire year's expenses. This is stronger than the proof of the Hanafi and the Malikiyya. As we'll see, it will come around later in a second. So what's the faqir then? The one who has either nothing or he has less than half of his yearly expenses. Example, let's say a man needs $1,000 a month for his expenses. This is an example, $1,000 a month. And when we say his expenses, him and his family. The ulama say also the one he's responsible for. So included in his expenses or his family expenses, because it's wajib upon to take care of his family. So let's say a man needs $1,000 for himself and his family. So this is how much he needs per month. And per year he needs $12,000 a year. All right, 1,000 times 12. But let's say his monthly income is only $400 a month. So 400 times 12, he's going to have $4,800 a year. So he needs 12,000 and he only has 4,800. This person has less than half. He doesn't have 6,000. So he's a faqir. Not a miskin, he's faqir because he has less than even half. So that's how you determine a faqir. So scholars, why did they focus on this calculation? If someone has less than half the year's amount he needs, or you can say per month, he has less than half per month, and obviously by the year, then this person, what we're going to give him? How much we're going to give him then? The scholars say you're going to give him enough for him and his family for the whole year. So it's important. The calculation of what status he is in will determine how much we give him. Because if he says faqir, what are you going to give him? If he has 4,800 and needs 12,000, we're going to give him whatever is remaining of that. How much he needs to get to his 12,000, that's it. Because he's a faqir. This is very important because in today's zakat calculations in the jam'iyat, that collect khayriyah, that collect the money, a lot of times you'll find that these different things are not taken into consideration. And I know from some little experience that some people who work in them and also what I've come across, there seems to be a lot of confusion in there, right? So there needs to be clarity, what's a faqir and what's not a faqir. So if someone comes to the masjid, مثلا, and says he's a faqir, and we determine that he's faqir, or if we have that much, we're going to give him the yearly, whatever is missing for his yearly amount. And the scholars, they say he collects enough for the year because zakat is collected yearly. The fa'idah we took before, the condition of zakat, يحول عليه حول, 1 year, right? So how much are you going to give him a year? Why? Because next year more zakat money comes in. And so scholars, they see the zakat organization, they should be finishing, ideally, they should be emptying the zakat funds per year. Right? From one zakat cycle to the next. Why? Because more zakat is coming. Okay, so for example, the zakat organization, they're collecting millions of dollars. They're hopefully getting rid of the zakat by the end of the year to collect more zakat. And it's not their money anyways, they have to get rid of it. And we'll see maybe later or maybe next week, what can they use the additional monies and different kind of things These are issues that come nowadays, like investing zakat money. This is a controversial one, right? Can you take zakat money and invest it? The question is for whose benefit? Right? The faqir can't access his portfolio. You find this case, some zakat organization invest in zakat money. Or for who? The faqir, they go say, we're going to make more money for the zakat. Yeah, but also the faqir, he needs it now. So this is a question that scholars discuss, we'll talk about later, from the nawazil. So new issues. Okay, issue 817, وَالثَّانِي الْمَسَاكِينُ. Number 2, second category is the masakin. And so the masakin, who are they? وَهُمُ الَّذِينَ يَجِدُونَ ذَلِكَ وَلَا يَجِدُونَ تَمَامَ الْكِفَايَةِ. The miskin is the one who has that amount, and يَجِدُونَ ذَلِكَ, يعني ذَلِكَ, which is half. He has half the year's expenses. وَلَا يَجِدُونَ تَمَامَ الْكِفَايَةِ. But he doesn't have enough for the whole year. Okay, so difference now we see. The miskin has half or more, but he doesn't have the whole year's expenses. If we use the last example, let's say the miskin, he needs $12,000 a year, and he has $500 a month he gets. So he has $6,000 a year. So he's missing half. So that person, since he has half and he's missing another half, he's a miskin, not a faqir. So what do we do for the miskin? We give him whatever he needs to fill his needs. So the closer he is to what he needs, you just give him that much. If he has 80% of what he needs, you just give him 20% missing. Like this. And when we say here that 20% means, that's why when you check the faqir and miskin, we just have to figure out his hal, what situation they're coming to you. And then you will give him what he needs. And we already proved what miskin means versus faqir. The fact that we have to know, since the ulama, some of them differ in definition of faqir and miskin, is one important benefit, which is definition of the miskin in the Hanafiya. The Hanafiya or the Ahnaf, they have a definition of miskin different than the other madhabs. What's the definition of miskin? So they say that if the person, we said before, if the miskin is one who has nothing, this is what they said. The one who has nothing is called miskin. So if someone has, let's say, enough money to pay zakat. So let's say somebody has, in Canadian dollars, about $600, right? 595 grams of silver is about $600 Canadian. So if somebody has the nisab amount or more for himself, the Hanafi say this person is ghani, he's not faqir wala miskin. Okay, it's important. This is their definition. Hence you see some of the organizations, masajid, they won't give. Because they say this person has enough, he's a ghani. So they say the rich person, the one who has enough money to pay zakat. He reached the nisab of any zakat possible of the 4 categories we studied so far. So if he has a nisab for animals or for what came out the ground or for business inventory or for gold and silver, if he has enough money to pay zakat, the zakat's liable on him, he's ghani, he's rich. And why? Because they said, Nabi Sallallahu said that the zakat is collected from who? تُؤْخَذْ مِنْ أَغْنِيَائِهِمْ. You take from the rich, وَتُرَدُّ عَلَى فُقَرَائِهِمْ, right? Hadith Mu'adh. You take from the rich and you give it to the poor. So they said he's the rich. Okay, so who remembers last week? We said, what is the meaning of rich in the Sharia? It changes from chapter to chapter. When it comes to paying zakat, this is the definition of rich. When it comes to collecting zakat, different definition of rich. When it comes to nafaqah, different definition of rich. You see, if we didn't say that, we'll end up here. If I have $600, for example, in my account, I need $10,000 per month. What is 600 going to do for me? So they're going to tell you, ghani, I'm going to say I'm faqir. Because we just said you have less than half. So you find that this definition is why some masajid and some organizations would follow the Hanafi view. They just ask you for your bank statement. If you have more than the nisab, they say walk. I know, but I actually know that. Yeah, it happens. And some of us are thinking, this guy's a miskin, but he's Hanafi. And many of the jam'iyat may be Hanafi or different views, so we have to understand the difference in fiqh. That's a mawqif, but it's not the strongest evidence, because the other group, they responded to that and said, well, this is the definition of ghani for the one who pays zakat, not the ahlul zakat. Okay? And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when it comes to collecting and giving zakat, he never made this condition. So is it possible for someone to collect zakat on one side and pay zakat on the other side? Yes. You can be both. You can collect the zakat and pay the zakat. Yes. And that's the wisdom behind giving the people the zakat. If we give the zakat to everybody who needs it, they're going to pay zakat. It's going to keep circulating. So you collect, you give, you collect, you give. To people, everyone gets money then. So it doesn't become that the rich only get the money. And the shuyukh, they mentioned this big benefit, that if zakat is collected properly and distributed properly, it's going to be enough as a welfare system. And that's why in the Muslim countries, and the places where the zakat is collected properly, everyone gives properly, and they collect it properly, distribute it properly, there shouldn't be any poverty. You find it, comparatively speaking. Even in the Gulf countries, compare their poverty rates. The poverty rates in these countries is night and day. And even though the GDP could be higher in many of our Western countries, but where is the distribution of wealth? Allah says in the Quran, when it comes to the fay, the war spoils, it shouldn't be circling amongst the aghniya minkum. Dulatan bayna aghniya minkum. It shouldn't be money that's circulating amongst the rich amongst you. And isn't the problem right in the West? We have capitalism, and we talked about it before in economics. That economically, capitalist societies make a lot of money, but what happens? It distributes amongst the rich more than the poor. The poor don't see a lot of money. So Islamically, you can collect zakat and then give a zakat. There's no problem with that, no harm in that. So this is the stronger view. But if you pay attention to this point, if you see an organization that's Hanafi, you would understand now how they would determine the zakat. Because that's their definition. The ghani is the one who has the nisab of any of the money for nisab. But we're going to say that the more correct view is the other one, that it goes back to al-kifaya. And even though kifaya is not clear, right, in terms there's no one set definition of kifaya, sufficiency, we say it goes to person to person. So for example, somebody could be having a very good job, but then he has to collect zakat. Is that possible? Yes. Because when we look at someone's zakat, we're not going to say how much money do you make. We should be asking how much are your expenses. Right? So somebody could be a millionaire and he's Ahlul Zakat. How? What's his expenses? Are 2 million. You see, sometimes you forget that. What if you're taking care of the whole village? Right? I mean, maybe some of us would say you make a lot of money, but you have a lot of expensive. You don't really have that much money. And that's why they say, tell us in business, is not how much money you make, how much you save, right? It's very important. Some of the ulama we mentioned before, Al-Layth bin Sa'ad, rahimahullah, the Qadi Misr, he used to make about 80,000 dinar per year as a Qadi in Misr. Al-Layth bin Sa'ad is a level in Malik. That's his waqt, right? Shafi'i went to Egypt to visit Layth. Layth died before he came. So he's as knowledgeable, some people say more knowledgeable than Malik. And Layth bin Sa'ad, he never pays zakat in his life. Because all the money he makes, he gives it to the fuqara and tulab al-ilm and his students. So 80,000 at that time is big money, but there's no, because he's giving it away. So we don't have to look at someone's bank statement and say, oh, subhanAllah, you make a lot of money. We should ask, well, what are your expenses to determine if he needs kifaya? So kifaya will be case by case. Because the other groups, they say that the other group, the Hanafi, say the kifaya is vague. We need a determinant. We need a criteria. But the problem with it is that you can't really say somebody who has a lot of money but has a lot of expensive that he doesn't need. It's also possible someone's good financially, then 1 month, he had a rough patch. Can he come to the masjid to collect zakat? Yes. And it happens, right? Someone is, mashallah, but this time something happened. An unknown expense came and put him in financial issue. That's okay, he can collect. And so maybe he just needs a little bit. And why we need to know this issue of kifaya? Because if someone comes to the masjid and says, I need some money, and we say, okay, right now you're in the position of being a maskeen. The more people are going to be maskeen than faqir. Because they might have enough, but then something's missing. Or something came up. So this person, you can give him from the zakat money, whatever he needs, and he goes. So it's benefit to know that. At the same time, even it's not only for the organizations. Me and you can give our zakat to such people. You know someone who's a maskeen, you can give them your zakat because they meet the qualification. Okay, issue 818. الثالث العاملون عليها. Number 3, the third category, those who are working to collect the zakat. وهم السعاة عليها ومن يحتاج إليه فيها. So it is those who are busy collecting it or assisting in its collection who are in need of it. So here the Shaykh is talking about the zakat collectors. Who are they? Whoever collects the zakat, distributes it, writes it, the money, or writes down the amount is collected, who physically weighs it and gives it out. So in today's Muslim countries, the zakat department, in the Muslim countries, who are busy in that department, whatever task they're doing, there's zakat collectors, amirun. And their work is going to be zakat for them. They get money for the work that they do. So do they have to be fuqara to collect money from the zakat amirun? No, the amirun are those who work to collect the zakat. Even if they're rich, they get zakat. So they're not like the other categories. as we'll see at the end of the chapter, the Shaykh mentions there's some people who get zakat and they're rich. The amil is one of them. So even though he's financially well off and he collects money from zakat, maybe this could be a part-time job, it could be his side job, it could be something he does. He has money other places, but can he collect zakat? Yes, because this category is not for those who are poor. So what does he get paid? He gets paid not in accordance to his need, but in accordance to his work. على قدر عمله. How much work did he do? That's what he gets. His ujra will be his wage, how much he worked for. So let's say now he's a zakat collector, he's a bookkeeper. For a particular collection of zakat, he writes down how much zakat comes in. He get paid for that job. What's the going rate? Ujr mithl. What's the going rate or the value for such equivalent work? So they call it equivalence numeration. How much money you get for that kind of work? So if that kind of work, let's say it gets $40,000, that's what he's going to get paid for doing his work throughout the year to do that. So this is important because zakat collector, he doesn't have to be poor. Right? It doesn't have to be. And this is where a lot of the problems come today. Right? In today's modern world, وَعَامِلُوا عَلَيْهَا is the question everybody is discussing today. Who's amil, who's not amil? Because, of course, in the Western countries, we have some unclarity. So the shuyukh, they mention that since he gets paid, this person, for doing accordance to their work, not their financial situation, the zakat collector has to meet conditions. Number one, he has to be Muslim, because this is the people who are in the category, this category, because we know the non-Muslims are coming next, right? وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُم different. So the first condition for zakat collectors, amilun, they have to be Muslim. Number two, mukallaf, legally responsible, right? So they have to have aql and baligh, etc. Number three, it cannot be from the household of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It can't be from Banu Hashim. And we'll see that towards the, I think it's the next chapter. The Shaykh says, who cannot collect zakat? And those who cannot collect the zakat, Banu Hashim, walihim, and their clients, as we'll talk about next week. So Banu Hashim, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's tribe, and his family, they don't collect zakat. And someone will say, why not? Why don't they collect zakat? Scholars say because number one, they get money from another source. They get it from the war spoils. So they already have another revenue for them. Right? So that's one. Their revenue is not from here, they get it from somewhere else. Hadith Muslim, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَةِ لَا تَنْبَغِي لِآلِ مُحَمَّدٍ. Sadaqah is not, and zakat is not allowed for the family of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he said, إِنَّمَا هِيَ أَوْسَاخُ النَّاسِ. It is the filth of the people. Now pay attention to that wording. أَوْسَاخُ النَّاسِ means it's filth. Zakat. Why are you paying the zakat? To purify your wealth, right? Who's collecting the zakat? Is it filth for them? No. But if you're not from Ahlul Zakat, you're collecting the zakat, remember, it's awsakh. And today, unfortunately, we have a society, people are, chasing after zakat money. Astaghfirullah. What are you doing, taking the filth of the people? And I've been saying this because if we look at our society today, you will not notice that, but zakat reaches us from Gulf countries. I'm sure some of you have seen some of the zakat that's collected and is given during Ramadan or iftar. You've seen that before? And it's on the board, it says zakat from Dawla Fulan. And we're Canadians. And what are we eating? The awsakh and nas. Are we fuqara? Allah, imagine, you see on the board, it's written there, zakat from this dawla, the rich Gulf countries giving us the zakat to eat iftar, and none of us here are poor. I know there's some fuqara amongst us, but this is Allahu A'lam what's going on there. It's ajib, because maybe they're thinking that these people need money. But we're not. None of us are not. So you see this problem today. People are collecting this money, saying zakat. If you take it and it's not your right, Yawm al-Qiyamah, you're in big trouble. It's big trouble. Anyone who takes people's zakat, who is not their haqq, Amam Allah, Yawm al-Qiyamah, they'll be in big trouble. Because this is not the haqq of anyone else except for the fuqara. And I'm saying this because, as we'll see in a second, this issue of zakat collection has been very abused, this concept. So scholars, they say that it cannot be from Banu Hashim because they collect money from the war spoils. And number two, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned this hadith and the wisdom behind it. So people, the detractors of Islam will not say Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family eat from the people's wealth. See, Islam is very hard, but it's very important. Who comes here, look, Prophet Muhammad, he tells them to believe in, he tells them to become Muslims so they can give them money. No. When the Prophet fights the battle, that's where he gets his money. See? And he said another hadith, وَجُعْلُ رِزْقِي تَحْتَ رُمْحِي. My provisions made for me underneath my spear, any battle. وَجَدَكَ ضَارًا فَهَذَا وَجَدَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى. That's the wealth, brother. It's very important. Nabi goes to work. And I'm saying this because imagine today someone comes and says, this guy is our leader, Our cult leader, we're paying him the money, and he's, you find the Christians like this, right? He's going to Jannah, he says, I'm a billionaire. And who's giving the money? The guy in the community. How come you're not going to Jannah? You're paying this guy's bill. Allah understand. It's very sad. It's a big problem. Right? And then they come and they say, this is Allah, God blessed us. Like, yeah, I don't know about that. And number 4, has strength to collect the zakat. It has to be the people who collect the zakat, they have strength. What does that mean? The person capable of collecting the zakat. So that person now, this last condition, scholars say, what does it mean strength? He's been sent to collect the zakat by the government. So now the amil has to be government official, appointed. This is where the first issue, mas'ala, comes. So what about here in this country? We don't have a Muslim country, Muslim government. We'll talk about it in a second. But the scholars say he has to have the quwwah, because imagine someone knocks your door and says, where's your zakat? Can I close the door and say, I don't know you. But if he comes as a government official, it's like the auditing we find today. Someone comes to the business and it says the government CRA sent you an auditor. Yeah, you're going to show him the books, right? Because this guy's a government official. Same. He comes as a government official. Maybe someone used to appoint them. So this is important. Now, what about in places like here where we don't have Muslim countries? Are we exempted? Scholars, they discuss this issue. Generally, scholars say that any country where there's a Muslim country, government, there's no amil except appointed by the government. Hence, any charitable organization that it will operate in the Muslim countries, which is not government officiated or organized, that they cannot collect zakat. And they cannot take the amil, they're not amilun, they can't take the zakat for the employees. But if they are collecting zakat and they're distributing it as a good from them, that's allowed, but they can't take it unless they're from the government. But the non-Muslim countries, scholars say this rule is exempted due to the absence of the Muslim government. Shaykh al-Mashaykh, for example, Shaykh al-Uthaymin, student, in his kitab, Mukhtasar Nawazil al-Zakat, page 41, he says that some Muslim organizations or charitable organizations who fill the role of the Muslims and their needs, humanitarian needs, in the Bilad Kufar, in the non-Muslim countries, it is permissible for them to be considered amilin, right, due to their work. وَيَسْقَطْ فِيهِ إِذْنَ الْإِمَامِ. The permission of the Imam falls off them because there's no Imam. Now, if we agree to this, that in these countries today, big organizations, you know their names, all of these different organizations, since they're helping us collect money for the poor and needy in this side of the world and outside of this country, they can collect zakat as amilun, as workers. However, how much can they take? That's the question. Which leads to the next mas'ala for the nawazil. Can they take administrative fees, these organizations, in order to pay for their workers? And this is what today a lot of organizations are under fire for. A lot of charitable organizations have taken liberty to take a lot of money under the guise that we're amilun alayha. So while we can agree that they are amilun alayha because they live in a non-Muslim country and you don't need a Muslim ruler's permission here because there is no ruler, they can take some money for their workers, but it has to be conditioned or stipulated to be a small amount, not a large amount. And the ulama, they differed first of all on this issue. And I'm sure some of us, we've heard about it. Organization taking 15% of the bottom line, 12%, 18%, 10%. And when we say bottom line, how much are we working with? Sometimes billions, $1 billion, some $500,000. So they have a lot of money that they're taking and the salaries are distributed. So it means how many zakat workers are there? I don't know, let's say that a company has 20 to 50 of them. Everyone is 100,000 above, right? Minimum. And the CEO, mashallah, he's in the millions. So people found a lot of offense to this and said, how can the zakat, he's doing charitable work, right? That's what they say today. He's doing non-for-profit, but he's making more money than the Prime Minister. Maybe double the amount of the Prime Minister of Canada. Some people would say this is not correct. And if you can check online, all the organizations, how much they make and who's making what. So there has been a lot of discussions and some even scandals because some of the organizations, they have no fiqh of zakat, brothers. There's no such concept. It's getting somewhere now. But I'm telling you, there isn't such a thing. Some organization, they're paying the money to take ads to attack other organizations. They're taking the zakat money to pay for Google ads to get the zakat to come to them and not their competitor. It's not a business, right? I mean, what competitor? This guy's collecting zakat too. But he's a competitor, so Google ads. I don't know, but so these kinds of expenses are unheard of. And other things that are unmentionable. So scholars, they differ first. Can they take an administrative fee? There are two opinions amongst the scholars. And when they say this, they're talking about specified zakat. So zakat donations are two types, unspecified and specified. Unspecified, for example, I give $1,000 to an organization, they can do whatever they want. It's not for a particular cause. Just take it. That's called unspecified donation. Some big wealthy people, they give all this unspecified donations every year to organizations just for their own purpose to benefit. So that one, the ulama allowed they can use it for their benefit because that one is unspecified. So for example, a rich person, he says he gives, let's say every year, a couple $1,000 to an organization he likes. He doesn't tell them it's for Gaza or for any poor or a particular need. And from that, they can take money. And they can use it for their fees, for their workers. But the khilaf between the ulama is under what? When there's a specified cost. Taking administrative fee for a specified zakat cost. Like, we're collecting money for zakat. And this is not a amil. Or we're collecting money for a particular cause and we're taking administrative fees from that. So while we already agree that the amil who lives in a non-Muslim country can take zakat, where does he take it from? Should he take it from unspecified donations or specified? This is what the discussion is. So for example, let's say they have this much million from regular unspecified donation and this much hundreds of millions from zakat. So we're going to say that they could take from the zakat because we said you live in this country. But in the Muslim countries, what's happening is you take administrative fees from anywhere, from this zakat and from the unspecified. So for example, when you donate, it says 85 cents per dollar goes to the cause, 15 cents per dollar goes back to the organization. So scholars have said that this shouldn't be done. One group of scholars said no. Another group of scholars said permissible, but you can't make it 15%. You cannot make it big amounts like that. So let's take a look quickly at the two views. The first view is that it is not permissible. And the group of scholars, they held this view. Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah, in Majmu' Fatawa, in Liqaat Bab Maftuh, he takes his opinion. And Shaykh Abdul Aziz Shaykh, the Mufti, current Mufti of Saudi, and others. So they take this view that it's not allowed. Because they say that money is specified for a particular cause, so you're not allowed to take any cause out of it. And why? Because the zakat collectors, they said, the charity organization, their job is that they're doing wakala, they're wakil. A wakil cannot take a wage or an amount from that which he's been entrusted with, except with permission. Okay, so this is important. What is the zakat collector's job now? To collect the zakat and give distributor, right? So it's like a wakil, an agent. I'm sending you the money and trusting you to send it to the needy. So they argued, because the zakat organization is a wakil, he cannot be taking fees except with the permission of the one who gave him the money, right? Like right now, if I give you $10 and say give it to your uncle, and you take $1 without permission. No, you can't. You have to tell me. And if you tell me, I decide how much. So that's another problem to say. If it's a wakil, you have to tell me how much. How can I send you $1? You took 85 cents, you gave, and 15. You decided 15 is for you. This is not allowed, they said. And they argued also that this will also lead to the organizations, right, getting more and more. And at the end of the day, that's the argument. The second group of scholars, they say it's permissible. And this group is, again, a big group of scholars, the biggest of the being, Majma' al-Fiqh al-Islami, one Islamic World League, Fiqh Academy and the World League. They held the view is permissible with conditions. And other ulama of that level, right, they said it is permissible. And what's their argument? They said that ultimately, since the zakat collector can collect zakat in general, if he can collect zakat in general from zakat, he's allowed to take any fee from any kind of money, as long as he's taking a reasonable amount. Because Allah says, وَعَامِلٍ عَلَيْهَا. So if you can take money from zakat, why can't you take, for example, amount from sadaqah or another cause? They said any cause, as long as you take a reasonable amount. They also argue that this will allow the organization to be able to do its job. And whatever cannot establish the obligation, right? Al-wasa'il laha ahkam maqasid, right? The fiqh principle that the wasa'il, the means take the ruling of the purpose. Okay, so with that being said, we bring it back to our topic here. This country is now, we have non-Muslim country, no Muslim rulers. So the charitable organizations are considered amirun, workers. So they are allowed to take a fee or amount from the zakat. How much should they take? That's the question. So the scholars, if you go back to Majma' Fiqh, what did they say? On page 225, when they asked this question, they were asked about charitable organizations collecting funds for relief in North America. Okay, which this is قرارات المجمع الفقهي الإسلامي بمكة المكرمة, page 225. So who are مجمع الفقهي الإسلامي? This is the Fiqh Academy. There's two of them. One connected to the World League and one connected to International. These are the biggest scholars in the whole Muslim world, right? This is the biggest. So when these guys get together and pass fatwas, these are the most reliable fatwa you're going to get. Because the kibar ulama sit there all across the world and they figure out these issues. So there's two of them, dually, the international one, and then the one which is connected to Rabit Islami. In any case, they said here that there's no harm in taking a specific portion of the money collected. However, it should not be a nisbah. It should not be percentage. It should be an ujr to mithl. It should be what's considered an equivalent or market, like we can say, like the going rate for the task. So let's say this organization has a CEO, an accountant, and other groups of people who are working. What is the amount an accountant should get? What's the amount for a typical CEO in this field? That's the amount they get. Not 15%, because if you say 15% of millions, or some organizations make billion, and then they have this mashallah amount, and what do? Everybody mashallah take. Right? Take what you need. Wala haraj, no problem. And if you think this is funny, brothers, this is actually real. Some Hajj organizations, you'll be shocked at how much they take. Right? When they finish the zakat, Hajj, everyone's finished. Hajj Mabrur, mashallah. Now we have all this money. Take what do you need? How much? 10,000? One guy will take by himself. He went for Hajj too. He made the Hajj, inshallah, Mabrur, and 10,000 with him. This is real. This is not an imagination, brothers. Some stuff, if you were to find out, you'd be surprised. So this is what the scholars they say. Or أقل من أجرة مثل. It has to be less than the typical wage. Or less. Why? Because this is people's money. See how they're thinking? Whose money is this? The people. Take less. So let's say the going rate for the accountant or the bookkeeper is 60,000. You take a little bit less. You're doing charitable work, right? Lillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is important because this will show us what? Should not be percentages. And the reason why I'm highlighting all of this, if you go online, you can see discussions that are happening on this. So alhamdulillah, the ulama have spoken about this issue, and it's good for us to know it. Otherwise, if we don't know it, then we ourselves may not be confused. What about me giving my money to an organization that takes an administration fee? Halal or haram? It's halal. But you have the choice to give to an organization you feel most comfortable with. If you don't agree with them taking 15%, don't have to give to them. To give to one who gives 100%. But there are organizations that they do 100%. So how do those organizations do it? Some organizations, they say 100% the donation to the needy. How? Because they collect it from the tax, from the non-Muslim government, or tax relief. Especially in the UK, they have a dollar-to-dollar matching. So every donation that you give them, the government will give their organization a tax, equivalent tax credit, or like a payback. So they pay their workers all from there. Allahu Akbar. Really, that's actually much, much better and a higher ethic we should be aspiring for. Unfortunately, there are some organizations who are criticizing this practice. I wonder why, brothers. Why Allah musta'an. Really, some organizations say they shouldn't do it, it's not correct. It's like, I don't know. So we should encourage those. But if someone gave an organization that is 10 to 15% or something like this, you're not blameworthy and sinful, but you have to be aware of that. Right, that your money might not be 100% given. But because the ulama differ on it, one of you is allowed, one is not. If you say it's not allowed, then you will give to organizations that don't do that. Because you don't want your zakat, you don't believe that they're taking an amount as necessary. But since we said that they are amirun, they are allowed to take, but we encourage them to take less than what they're taking. Take not percentage, take amount. Because all these organizations are amirun then, but they should take less. And we should encourage them that they should take less. Wallahu a'lam. And we finish, inshallah, with a little bit more. And then next week we'll finish the next pages. He says, issue 819. وَالرَّابِعُ الْمُؤَلَّفَةُ قُلُوبُهُم. Number 4, the fourth category, those hearts who need to be softened or will be softened. وَهُمُ السَّادَةُ الْمُطَاعُونَ فِي عَشَائِرِهِمْ الَّذِينَ يُرْجَى بِعَطِيَّتِهِمْ الْإِسْلَامُهُم. It is those, he said, leaders from their group, from their tribes, who are obeyed by their tribes. Those who, if given zakat, they will become Muslim. أو دفع شرهم أو قوة إيمانهم أو دفعهم عن المسلمين أو معونتهم على أخذ الزكاة ممن يمتنع من دفعها. So the Shaykh, he breaks into 6 categories, and we'll try to cover them quickly. So who are the people here? وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةُ قُلُوبُهُم are those people, you're giving them zakat money to soften their hearts towards Islam. And the Shaykh broke him into 6 categories. And before getting there, his definition first is that it's those people, and he mentions categories. So there's not just one group, it's different groups. Muslim and kafir. So there's kafirs amongst them, and there's a Muslim who's a Muslim, who became Muslim, and his iman is weak. That's one of them. So that's the more correct opinion. It's not limited to the kafir. I think I might have said that before, that it was only limited to the kafir. That's not the correct opinion. The correct opinion is both. Even those who are Muslims who are weak in iman. Okay, before getting there, does this category still exist? Yes. So the scholars, they differ. Is there such thing as mu'allafati qulubihum? They said yes, there is. But there's two opinions. Number one, the Shafi'iyya and the Hanabila, they say it remains. It's not abrogated, this category. Second opinion, it is abrogated. This is the Hanafi view. So how come the Hanafis say that that category doesn't exist? They said because Abu Bakr and Umar anhuma never gave such categories. So this is saying Abu Bakr and Umar al-Khilafah, they never gave such categories. They gave to everybody else. But the correct opinion is that no, it does exist. Why? Because number one, chapter 9, Surah Tawbah, ayah 60, Allah mentioned them. Number two, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave it. He gave it. For example, he gave it to Abu Sufyan, Safwan ibn Umayyah, and others, Aqra' bin Hasib, and some Habis, and others. So when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did it, Allah mentioned it, and therefore the amal of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam remains. It's not abrogated. As for Abu Bakr and Umar, they did not give it because they were living in a time where Islam was spreading so fast, people become Muslim easily and quickly. Because we know, after Fath al-Makkah, وَرَأَيْتُ النَّاسِ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا, there were coming crowds. So they say that there's so much Islam, you didn't need to strengthen anyone's iman necessarily at that time. So that was a temporary condition, it wasn't a rule they made. So here we learn that you can still give it. How does it look? There's 6 groups. We'll mention all 6, and then we'll mention a contemporary issue and we stop, inshallah, so we can continue next week. Number 1, the first group or scenario from this category is you're giving it to a non-Muslim leader, in order to deflect evil from the Muslims. So this person, he's a non-Muslim, you're giving him money, so he will not harm us. So let's say he's a leader of his community, he can rile them up against Islam, maybe fight the Muslims or do some harm to the Muslims. So we give them some zakat money to make dafa' of his shar. Scholars say this is permissible, but he must be a leader, not a ami, a layperson. A layperson's harm can be reflected by others. So Islam, imagine, you're giving money. Today, when you look at this category, you can see it. You might look at this as people, some type of siyasa go on PR issues. Yes, there is contemporary discussion about how the zakat for this category should work. Because the world we live in today, we know there's allies and there's enemies. And there's people who are potential foes. So you can use sometimes the money to bring maslahah to the Muslims. So that's the first one. So the first benefit we take is not limited. Every one of these scenarios is not a leader. Shaykh Imam Ibn Qudaamah, he mentioned, وَهُمُ السَّادَةُ الْمُطَاعُونَ. He mentioned this is generally the rule. That all of the 6 he's going to mention are leaders of the people. But the scholars say no, not all they have to be leaders. The first one though is a non-Muslim leader of his people, who we give him zakat money in order to deflect any harm from the Muslims. Because if you give him the money, he will tell his people, don't bother the Muslims. Leave them alone. Number 2, someone who entered into Islam and his iman is weak, you want to strengthen the iman, you give it. And some will say, how come we're giving him money that's going to strengthen his iman? He's not doing it for Allah's sake. No, he's already Muslim. But he needs some money. Maybe that's one of the reasons why his iman is weak. And he always has to remember why some people's iman is weak. And everyone has shubuhat. Some people just for hajat. He's hungry. Give him some food. That's it. What do you think the Christians are doing to spread Christianity? Did they convince anybody about the Trinity? I don't think so, right? They're taking care of people, teaching them English, giving them bread, and the people become Christian. And they don't know the Trinity still. Whereas us, the person will come to Islam in ways, but he's hungry. We have to know many of the reverts they fall into the category. Brothers and sisters, we have to know many of the reverts. You'd be surprised. Most of the people who need zakat, from my limited experience, I find many of them single mother reverts. Most of us, we don't know. Because our society, we don't think about them. But our zakat money, like we said, it's coming here and going back home. Oh, brothers, there's people here. So if somebody is a Muslim but weak, give him. And we'll strengthen him. And this helps us to also allow them to have their needs. So the zakat money should be dedicated for a portion towards them. And especially those, because those people, not only they're going to be better state, their iman will become stronger because they might not be in need, but also they could do da'wah to others. Third one, somebody, you give them money to defend the Muslims, and he's somebody, if you give him the money, and he's a leader of his people, he has to be a leader of his people, you give him money to defend the Muslims. So maybe there's somebody who's going to then go and he's going to help Islam and Muslims. So the first category is to deflect the harm. This one is going to defend the Muslims against any attack or any kind of criticism or something like this. So you give him zakat money to help him to be an ally for the Muslims. Again, who's deciding all of this? The government, right? Muslim government and the zakat leader collectors, not just anybody. Number 4, somebody who will help you in collecting the zakat. And what is meant by this is that if there's somebody who if you give him the money, he's going to go collect the zakat from the people who are not paying it, or the people who are withholding it, or the people who, for whatever reason, they're not paying it. So you give this person some money and he goes and he collects the zakat for the Muslims, or he's going to assist us in doing so. And he must be a leader. So you give this man a leader and he'll go into his people and he'll sort it out. Because remember, zakat collection is not easy, because there are mani'un, those who don't pay. And the 5th one is somebody who's a kafir, but if we would give him money, he'll become Muslim. So he's not like the other one who's already Muslim. This one's a kafir. We give him money, he'll become Muslim. The scholars, they say this kind of person, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to give. He used to give to such people. For example, he gave to Safwan bin Umayyah. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave him so much money, he said that he used to be the most hated person to me, but he kept giving me until he became the most beloved person. The easiest form of da'wah, just give people, you pay for them things, you take them here, gifts. How could you hate someone who gives you a gift? You can't. It's impossible. And that's why you have to give a lot. You find oftentimes the non-Muslims are surprised by the generosity of the Muslims. And so the last one they say is connected to the one before we said. So the person who's going to help us, and then there's a person who, the last one is a person who, if you were to give him the money, and this person, he will become Muslim, and then also everyone behind him will become Muslim. So he's not like a regular person, he's a leader. So if you will give him money, he'll become Muslim, and all his people. Or maybe you could say, or even his friends. For example, you give somebody money and he becomes Muslim, and his friend becomes Muslim. So not just him. Or you give him money and he will help his friend become Muslim. So all of them revolves around the same kind of issue, but scholars have broken it up into these categories. All of this shows us that in the day there are such categories people like this. To finish, what about, for example, in today's time? How do we understand this in today's time? So scholars say in today's time there are obviously organizations and things like this that are needed for da'wah and like this. And so some scholars, they extended this and said, you can use the zakat money to help also in establishing such organizations. Right? Organizations to help new Muslims. Alright, so it's connected and it was going to come later. So some of the ulama, they said, وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ Shaykh Khalid bin Shaykh, for example, he says, part of this is organizing or opening organizations for new Muslims. Right? It's permissible to give money to open a new Muslim organization, zakat money, to use it to help people who are hopefully looking for Islam, or to win the heart of those people who are interested in Islam. And likewise, you can give the money to leaders of different countries and tribes, etc. That's a benefit, because today maybe we have a new revert program. How are we going to fund it? You fund it in zakat. Yes, you can. And that's how Islam thinks, right? We have to think about those things. Because sometimes, and then we'll see later, how about da'wah itself? Can you take from zakat? We'll talk about that next week, inshallah. So this is a summary of the first 4, and there's 4 more, inshallah. We'll take them next week. And have any quick questions? Organizations like that, the NCMM, what's it called, NC? NCCM, these kind of organizations, we have to figure out their role as Muslims, because we said here, right now, we're covered this much, and the next one is going to be Fi Sabilillah. We're going to talk about it there next week specifically. Who is Fi Sabilillah? Is it open to ijtihad, or is it only limited to Hajj and jihad? We're going to see next week. But scholars are very, some of them are very strict in this issue, and some of them are more lenient, right? But we'll see. But this is the problem today. Some organizations, they declare themselves to be from there and say, we're Fi Sabilillah, and none of their work is really going to for Islam or da'wah. Maybe they're doing other peripheral work. So we'll talk about next week who is Fi Sabilillah specifically, and how much leniency is there. Because Shaykh said it's 8 only, and that's one of the arguments. There's no beyond jihad and da'wah. There's no, and jihad and hajj. So we will see. But this is one of the troubles in today's time, because we said the third category is amilun. There's some organizations who, at the same time, they say we're amilun, so we're workers. Wa fi sabilillah, we're also working in Allah's path. So we collect both, right? So they're actually collecting 2 times. So these kind of problems we have, organizations collecting zakat from 2 sides. So ultimately 15% becomes 30%. And we have these kind of, or some organizations say we're doing da'wah work. There's nothing, no one knows what da'wah they're doing. Or nobody who's faqir is getting any benefit. So scholars say if they're doing da'wah work, how do we know da'wah work is for da'wah, for the people, or is it, and there's another question, who for who? So sometimes you might find that even the masajid now are competing, the madaris are competing, the schools, the organizations are competing, and the zakat is drying. So we're going to talk about next week, who is Fi Sabilillah. If we can figure that out, then we figured out this question, inshallah. Another question? Yes? So good. So last time we said $600 is how much you need to pay the zakat, and kifaya is how much you need to kick the zakat. So let's give an example. Somebody has $600 or more for one whole hijr year. He's going to pay his zakat. Then he also has money, he needs money for his rent. You go to the organization, he collects some other zakat. So he's paying zakat, he has to pay zakat, that's different. Here I'm talking who collects zakat. So somebody could be paying zakat and collecting zakat at the same time. And the Hanafi said, no, if you can pay zakat, you're not allowed to collect zakat, period. So let's give the example. Somebody, he has $600 in his account, his rent is $2,000. Does he have to pay zakat? Or say if he had it for one whole hijr year, even though he needs to pay his rent and he has 600 more, he have to pay zakat. But that's giving the zakat. I'm talking collecting zakat. So collecting the zakat has nothing to do with you paying zakat. So a lot of people they find today, they can pay the zakat every year, but still he needs to collect zakat. But the Hanafi said, if you're able to pay zakat, you're never allowed to collect zakat. You're rich. But we just said the problem with that is if you see that guy, he's paying the money that his rent at the end of the month, he cannot get. So we say that they're 2 different chapters. One who collects the zakat and one who gives zakat, 2 different issues. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Can we use CRA standard to help us categorize? Well, the scholars say when it goes to kifaya, it's more to do with the need. Because let's say somebody has a family, he have less than 45,000, but maybe his expenses is very less. Maybe he has other benefits he gets. So if we said that based on this category, it wouldn't make. Look at the expenses. Very important. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So that's a good question. The person who collects zakat, if we give him less than the going rate, he's going to maybe become miskeen. Well, oftentimes the one who's collecting zakat, maybe he's already getting other money. So the question is, you're right. Let's say he is faqir, and maybe he's going to get, like if his only job is this, we're going to give him maybe equal rate. But a lot of times zakat collectors, because they're in the government, they may have other roles in the government, so he's well compensated. I mean, the reality is, brothers and sisters, most of the zakat collectors, he's well off. He's not a poor guy, He works for the poor, but he's not a poor. So what we need to do in our community, we want to bring down their wages a little bit for the benefit of the poor. Because where people are getting upset today, they look at the wages of the zakat, they say, no, I should become non-profit. Maybe I should open my own jam'iyyah. Maybe I'm going to become, mashallah, I don't need to work. And this is why some people, wallahu musta'an, it happens already. Some new organizations that exist because of this. They're collecting, and all kinds of money. So we, as Muslims, as scholars say, we have to go back to this ethic. May Allah make it easy. Any last question? Yes. So good. Someone has paycheck. If he's saving $600 or more a year, yes. But if he's living paycheck, he's usually not doing that. So we're using the scenario that somebody, let's say he did save some money. It could be emergency fund. He's not supposed to use it. But at the end of the day, he has more than 600 he saved for some emergency. But his expenses are also a lot. The issue is, if he's paying the zakat for that 600, it doesn't stop him from collecting the zakat after that. But usually what we see, anyone who's faqir, maskeen, usually doesn't have any savings. So just what we're trying to say is that we look at the person's expenses. Because if we use the Hanafi standard, a lot of people are exempted. This is not the more correct view. But knowing this will help you understand why some masajid give more and some give less. You will see now why. Because sometimes he says, someone go to the masjid, he comes back and says, they rejected me. I say, what happened? Now you know, okay, they take this view. So this is what we're trying to say. But you're right, most of the situations, I would say the person paycheck, he doesn't have even any emergency. He doesn't have anything. Right? Yes. So someone has? Wealthy relative giving money. We're going to get to that next week. The answer is yes, but with the conditions. For example, that the person who's giving him is not one he has to take care of. The scholars are different. For example, can the husband collect the zakat from his wife? Someone will say, well, yes, he can, because the wife can give the money to the husband, but she's not supposed to take care of him. But for him, can he give to his wife? They said no, because he's supposed to take care of her anyways. But the situation, we find that some scholars say that it depends on who is underneath his responsibility to begin with. Some people, what they do is they pay the zakat back to their family household. He's not paying zakat to anyone else. It goes back to him. So, for example, your son, you're taking care of him. I give my son the zakat, he gives back to me. I said, I paid my zakat. It's like, no, you didn't. He didn't have an account. You just put it back in your. So this kind of thing happens. So scholars say you have to be with the conditions. We're going to talk about it. But also, in the case you're not taking care of them, you get double reward. Number one, silatul rahim, you're taking care of your family. And number two, the zakat. So that's the best zakat you give. And we can actually use this to help our communities now. If you have family members back home, give them the zakat. Because number one, they have more right to it. Number two, you get double reward. And sometimes for many of us, could be the only way you tie the kingship anyways. Maybe you don't talk to them that much. I give them money every year. Inshallah, Allah will not hold you account because you're not cutting them off. But maybe they're too far, or their relationship, you don't know you that much, distant relative. But I give them every year something. That's actually one of the good ways to do it. Inshallah ta'ala. Any last question? Otherwise we finish. Yes. So if someone having debt, does it affect eligibility? We talked about before. So someone who's gharimin, we said we're gonna talk about next week, he can collect his zakat. But we said last time that the scholars differ. The one who has debt, does he pay or not? So they said, how much debt does he have? Does he have enough that takes all his wealth or more than the nisab? That he doesn't have to pay. Where the other group of scholars say it doesn't matter. If he has that amount, he has to pay. And we said that both are legitimate opinions. But the second view, that if he has more than a nisab, he has so much it takes all his money, or it takes so much that he has no nisab left, then he doesn't have to, because he's going to collect it. But the second opinion, which is very common, is that he still has to pay. Well, so what they say is you pay your let's say you have a loan from some let's say school or something, you pay your zakat, and then later if you need to collect money for your debt, you go to the zakat organization and get it back. But the other group of scholars say if you're in the zakat, if you're in the 8, you should not be talking about paying. And I think this is an opinion as well. But just take a look at how much debt. That's the key. How much debt? Inshallah, we'll continue next week. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.